before God called him, he survived things that should have killed him.
I've lived a life from the day I was born in which I had so many questions that I could not answer. I got into a lot of complications in my life. I was not faced with a threat to my life just when I became a minister of the gospel. My life was on different dimensions of threats throughout my upbringing. I was born when I had spent 11 months in my mother's womb. A witch doctor delivered my mother. That's how I was born. Not necessarily a witch doctor, but a woman who had a divination spirit, who was an aunt to my mother, walked on foot for more than 30 kilometers under the influence of some spirits to deliver my mother. Because her pregnancy was overdue. She almost died even during that day when I was born. That's what I was told. Andina kuzvarwa ndaita 9 months, mdumbura mai vangu ndakaita 11 months. I had a serious eyesight disease when I was less than 3 years old. I almost got blind. They went from one hospital to the next trying to find me medical help for that eyesight problem. And then when I got to around 4 years old, the problem disappeared. My mother's sister tried to kill me by pouring boiling water upon me when I was 12 years old. She got angry at me. She picked up a 5-liter tin which was boiling on the stove. She poured it on me. I stood motionless for about 15 minutes. My body became like a dry piece of wood. I can't remember the sensation that I felt on that particular day. I never developed blisters. Andina kufunuka, andina kutamatuzu. Ndakango yenda murwizi ndikaita inenge 1 hour ndakangogara mumvura. And that's how it happened. And I remember after pouring that tin of water on me, she was very surprised. She exclaimed. She said, "Oh." And she stood there looking at me for about 5 minutes. She couldn't walk herself. She didn't believe why she had done what she had done. I saw myself that she didn't mean to do that. I don't know why she did that. She was one of the people that abused me when I was growing up. Very, very serious abuses that I went through from almost everyone that I met. There is nobody who took custody of me and did not abuse me. At some point when I was 8 years old, I was expelled from home. And I went to school for 5 days from the wilderness. I lived in the forest. And I would come back from school, wash my shirt and put it on the stone, stand there naked until the shirt is dry. At night, I took a rope, tied myself onto the tree, slept in a tree. Early in the morning, I woke up, went into the river, took a bath, went to school. At school, nobody saw that this man is not coming from home. And there was no one who looked for me for those 5 days. The 5th day, a very long distance cousin followed me, saw where I was sleeping, and he cried. He was 17 years old. He asked me to come down, and he took me to his father's house. And then he pleaded with my guardians to take me back home. So those are some of the things that I grew up experiencing. But there are also very, very strange things that would happen to me that made it difficult for me to understand what exactly is wrong with my life. I started to have a passion for God that was not normal. My family used to attend AFM, so we got there, and they used to organize prayer vigils, prayer night vigils. As young as when I was 8, I would attend prayer sessions without sleeping the whole night, and the whole adults in that church were surprised. Now, what I'm trying to show you is a pattern of things that were not normal about me. I realized they were not normal. And somehow, I also knew that something spiritual is wrong with me, even at that time. For example, at any given time, I would know where I would be the next year, somehow, without knowing how I knew. And I would start to tell people, I remember one thing I can tell you also that some people do not know. My mother got divorced with my father when I was 3 months old, because my father had married my mother as a second wife, and when my mother was 5 months pregnant to my father got a third wife. So my mother was not happy about it, and when I was born, 3 months later, they broke up. My mother went back to her mother's house, and when I was 8 months old, my mother got married. My mother left me with her mother. She got married, never to come back. I didn't know my mother until I was grade 5. That's when my grandmother sat me down to tell me that she was not my mother. I grew up thinking that my grandmother was my mother. I remember a few occasions when my mother would come and call me a son. And I would say, I'm not your son, I don't know you. It was when I was in grade 5 that she came. Adults sat me down and they said, no, this one is not your mother. She's your grandmother. This one is your mother. But there was no relationship at all between me and my mother, to the extent that she refused to take me to the registrar's office to apply for a birth certificate. I almost dropped out of school when I finished grade 7. My headmaster encouraged me to report my mother to the police. The birth certificate that I got, my mother was forced by the police. They told her, we will arrest you, it's a child abuse. He's your son. She had a very abusive husband who didn't want to see me, so I never visited. Each time I tried to visit her, they would fight before the end of that day because of me. So I would come back to my grandmother's house. So that's how toxic my upbringing was. Now, in the midst of all those things, having a father who appears, my father before he passed away, he would appear maybe twice a year. Come to my grandmother, they would fight about me, collect me, spend the whole day with me and bring me back. Because my grandmother refused to give me to my father because my father had not paid anything. So vakainetsana. So baba vangu vaingonzi mutorei modzoka naye manheru. Mukasamudzosa, you'll be in trouble. So he would bring me back home. When I was in grade 4, my father passed away. So what happened is, during all those things, strange things would also happen to me. I would know what I would be doing the following year or 2 years later or 5 years later, and I would speak out. For example, when my mother was refusing to apply for a birth certificate for me, I had to repeat grade 7. Ndakadzokorodza grade 7, ndabuda ne 6 units. Nekuti ndanga ndisina birth certificate. Amai vari vapenyu vachiti handidi. Hapana, handisi kuda kungonetswa chete. Tigare tese, hatambotukana, handambovatadzira, but she's too busy with her husband. She's not interested. It was after I repeated that the headmaster said, no, you go to school, take your mother to the police. So I went and made a report. They wrote a letter. I gave her the letter. She told me, let them come and arrest me. Eventually, a police officer came to her and she promised to go, and the following day, the birth certificate was there. It never took her 1 hour. I had a birth certificate. But it had taken me repeating grade 7. My grandmother who raised me was not better either. She would do, when my ballpoint pen runs out, if I say to her, and sisina pen, vainditi ndokweretesa mari yepen, unofana kundiudza kuti unondidzosera rini. Ukasandidzosera mari yangu ndichauya kuchikoro kuzokutukirira. So during the weekends I would work extra jobs so that I can pay the debt of ballpoints and books that are finished. My grandmother is alive. I know she may watch this video later. I love her with all my heart. I am not bitter against her. Those that are close to me, they know that I love her. She's the best thing that I have right now. She's my family. I do the best that I can to make sure that she's comfortable, she's well taken care of. But this is a part of my life that I cannot be quiet. Yes. Because I am not lying. God knows I am not lying. Saka ndakarerwa nambuya, she did a wonderful job. She did a better job than my mother. Because she didn't also dump me by the rubbish post, the compost heap, or into the bin. How can a mother abandon an 8-month-old child? And I want to tell you that before my mother got married, when I was 8 months old, she was already refusing to give me a sack. I remember maini wangu vachiti vakatomborwa nemukoma wavo kuti maswera muri ipi vachiti mwana anoyamwiswa nani, eva vachiti vadi kuyamwisai vivi apa vari kutaura kunzi yamwisai havana mwana asataura zvakadaro. Dzimwe nyaya vakadzinzwa unoti ndedzekunyepa, hakuna mubereka akadaro, asi ndedzechokwadi. Now I'm telling you this because When my mother refused to apply for the birth certificate after finishing grade 7, I told my classmates who went to Form 1 that I'm going to join you and I'm going to overtake you. I would see things happening and I would speak it out and it would happen just like that.
Yes.
If this is opening your eyes, hit like and subscribe. More truth is coming.
Even when my mother passed away, people were praying for her to recover. I was in that room where everyone was praying. I stopped praying. I went out. I sat down. And the whole family was praying and speaking in tongues. You know what FM people do? They cancel and bind everything. After some time, my grandmother came to me and she said, "You are the most fervent person in this house in prayer. Why have you stopped?" And I told her, she's not going to leave. I had seen her leaving. I was not a prophet. I didn't know God, but those are some of the things that would happen. So the reason why I'm sharing with you something like that, it is because I found it difficult. That's why I was quiet from the 9th of December when the Lord appeared to me until in 2014. That's when I said for the first time, this is what happened to me. I could not understand who would want to listen to what I could say I have seen. There is no evidence. I don't have video evidence. Voice notes. It's just my mouth saying, this is what I saw. How can I explain that? Now, I want to remind you that I wrote a resignation letter to my employer, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, in April of 2012. The assignment was given to me on the 9th of December. Yes. Now, you may have heard me saying, I wasn't fired, I didn't start preaching because I lost a job. I resigned so that I can preach. I don't know if you've ever asked yourself, if I resigned in April and the Lord gave me the assignment in December, what then caused me to resign? Because I didn't receive the assignment first, yes, and then I resigned.
Yes.
No, ndandato resigna kudhara. Chi chakanga chandiresignisa. That's why I am telling you that things would start happening.
Yes.
And I would know that the Lord is speaking to me, but what would make me suspicious that it may be the devil? Mm-hmm. It was my confidence that I am not a child of God. I knew then. Yes. I was going to church. I used to go to Zayoja, to different churches, and I was a role model to most of the youth that I grew up with in almost everything that pertains to life. I knew that what the churches were preaching was wrong. And that's one of the things also that the Lord had communicated to me before. It was as a youth in Zayoja and fervent, prayerful, we were teaching other youths in the youth department, would be given chance to preach. Kuzayoja kune yavanoti forana, pastor vasati vaparidza, waipiwa time yekuparidza. Inini ndiri mumwe wevanhu vaita forunning. Ndakapedzisira ndavengwa napastor vainzi Pastor Piri. Vakatozondigarisa dare kuti iwewe hauna kuenda kuBible college. Kana vanhu vakakufarira sei chechi ino ndeyangu. Nekuti ndanga ndaakuitwa forerunner by public demand. Ndobva ndazosiyawo ndikazoenda kune chimwe chichechi chainzi ndisiye racho. Koko ndokwandakazobvawo ikoko ndaona kuti zvokunamata zvaramba. Ndobva ndazoti handichanamata. Ndakati zendarega kunamata zvachose. Ndandangoverenga bhaibheri ndiri kumba. What made me disillusioned and disenfranchised about going to church was the voice that continued to tell me that there is no such gospel as this. after either preaching myself or hearing some other people preach, I would hear the Lord say, there is no such message, like this is not a true message. You are not preaching, or they are not preaching. This is very wrong. So I became haunted until I stopped going to church completely. So before the Lord appeared to me on the 9th of December, he appeared to me first in April of 2012. He spoke to me actually. It was just a voice. Resign immediately. I have a better assignment for you to do. So I resigned. I called my wife. My wife, I had told her that certain things happen, and she got somehow used to those things happening. And I told her, the Lord wants me to resign. That was the first thing I told her when I went into my office. And she said, if you know it's the Lord, resign. So I resigned. What I did when I wrote the resignation letter, I was giving them 3 months notice according to the Labor Act. So I was going to work for 3 more months to save my notice. So I was supposed to work for May, June, and July. So my resignation letter was to commence the notice period. Surprisingly enough, the employer wrote to me a letter and said, well, we are excusing you. You can stop coming to work, but we'll pay you for your 3 months of notice. You don't need to come to work. And that was another confirmation that the Lord was involved.
Yes.
Because the rule is, if you are the one who give an immediate notice from your terminal benefits, you deduct your 3 months salary. But if you save your 3 months notice, you don't owe them anything. If they give you an immediate expulsion or termination of contract or retrenchment notice, they pay for those 3 months notice. It's according to the Labor Act. I wrote a letter and said I was going to be serving my notice. They replied and said, you don't need to save for your notice, go. We will pay you those 3 months salary. So we survived on that salary, and then things started to go south. I was jobless and I started to hustle. During that time, I didn't know what exactly the Lord wanted to give me as a better assignment than the work that I was doing. And I want to point out to you now that I was also doing very well in the industry. I'm telling you because it may give you a better understanding of how difficult it was for me to actually write that resignation letter. I left the company when it had retrenched less than 12 months before. I could have chosen to go on a voluntary retrenchment program, in which case I would have received a package. At that time when retrenchment happened, I had already started to hear the Lord saying you should go, but I was resisting because of my success in the industry. At that particular time, I had 2 salaries, and only my wife knew about it. So I enjoyed my life. Everything was fine. I had 2 salaries every month from 2 different employers at the same time. That's how successful I was. So when the retrenchment was done, I appeared on the newspaper with the central bank governor, because I was the vice secretary for the workers' committee for the whole bank, as young as I was. Something that had never happened before in the history of the central bank. Now, I was wondering what kind of a job the Lord wants me to do. From that day in April, when I was crossing Julius Nyerere at around 8:30 thereabout, when the voice spoke to me, go and write a resignation letter today. Don't forget where I've taken you, where I brought you. Because I used to be a temporary teacher in Mutare there. I also had left my job there the same way. The Lord was now instructing me to leave the bank. Ndakanda resigniswa futu kwandatozomborezera ndakangomira kuenda kubasa. Ndikatopedzera ndakuloda marore jecha ikoko. Zvaoma asi ndanziregedza. So I didn't go anywhere. I was hustling to feed my family. It was a relative small family, me, my wife, and our daughter. Our son was not yet born there, so we were 3 of us. We downsized. We lived in low density suburbs. We relocated to the high density suburbs to reduce the rental bills because the man was no longer having an income. Hustling took us from July, when our salary stopped coming down, up to December.
Before the assignment, there is always a process. What looked like destruction was preparation. If this testimony changed how you see your struggles, subscribe now, because what you're going through may be preparing you for your assignment.